about, flying to a new planet. It was about, waging war against some sort of zombie king. But it was really about societal things that were coming up, right? Everyone here has been on the internet. Everyone here has been mad about being on the internet. And I think we all know that you do not change anyone's minds by yelling at someone on the internet. But I do believe in the power of books to change people's minds by slowly introducing things to them and slowly introducing concepts. So as opposed to shouting about, gender equality, I write stories where the soldiers are both men and women. We never talk about it, it's just there. And I think that by writing an enjoyable story that people can really resonate with and touching on topics that are germane, that could possibly, change someone's mind. If you hit 1 out of 100, that's a win.
Really, at the end of the day, people know the difference between a sermon and a story. So, yeah, they know what you're reading.
Aleron, I actually have a question for you, just along these lines. I've been thinking, as Jen mentioned it, do you think that the lit RPG, this getting sucked into a video game thing, shares any roots with my generation's version, which is getting sucked into your D&D campaign, right? Which, the Guardians of the Flame, or I know Guy Gabriel Kay did one of these.
Absolutely.
They were really popular in the 80s, and now you don't see that anymore. You see it get sucked into a video game.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, so you guys, Guardians of the Flame, you're in this, and it's like a video game style world. The only real difference is that lit RPG takes it one step further in the nerdiness, so that as opposed to you're in a game and you are leveling up, they just sort of peripherally talk about it. It's like, okay, I killed my 100th imp. I now have, I've won the sort of karate monkey kill, and it's got +10 kind of thing. But it very clearly, the things that we loved about that, the things that we loved about Joe Devers, Kaya kind of thing, very much so are the same reason people like RPG. Yeah, that's the question by Brennan Sanderson.
I don't know, the first fantasy I read that I really remember influencing me was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And the one that came after that was The Jungle Book, and The Jungle Book 2 by Rudyard Kipling. I don't know if you've ever read the actual Jungle Book, but it's a full-on fantasy novel, man. It's awesome. The various animals have their own superpowers and everything. It's cool.
The first, it's hard to answer this because they were the formative years that deeply influenced me, but I hope, I assume everyone would say this, that I'm still being influenced, right? I hope that I'm still reading things that are really great by new and established authors alike that are changing the way that I look at the genre. I was brought into this genre by a 1-2-3 punch of Barbara Hanley, Anne McCaffrey, and Melanie Ron, who I still think are all three very deeply influential in how I approach constructing story, characters, and things like that. I'd say another really big influence on me was when I read Taigana by Guy Gabriel Kay, who I mentioned earlier, who it's one of the great standalone epic fantasies, and it's what taught me, hey, you can do a really great standalone big epic fantasy that also has lots of world building and things, and that changed the way I perceive things. Watchmen had a big influence on me, just from the kind of meta-narrative aspect. I think you'll find a lot of people from my generation got punched in the face by Watchmen and never quite recovered. These days, what I really like about the fantasy genre is just how many different things it's doing, and how kind of, you've got things like Natural History of Dragons, right? Which is just really cool and different. And there's a book called The Star-Touched Queen, and I read that because I was on a panel with the author at DragonCon a few years ago, and it's fantastic. It uses Indian mythology and folklore to kind of tell a very interesting, different style of story. And I really like how fantasy is becoming, I feel like in my reading generation it was really, really deeply influenced by Tolkien. We all are, right? But Tolkien cast a really long shadow over the 80s. A lot of great books that were very Tolkien influenced. And I think fantasy has stepped out of that shadow a bit, and I really like a lot of things that are happening now because of that.
I sort of had the opposite, I think, of your Jungle Book experience, Jim, in that at one point I sort of stopped and went, oh, I guess The Secret Garden isn't a fantasy novel, but try telling that to 7-year-old me, because I was capable of reading fantasy into just about anything that I put my hands on. And, when you're a little kid, you kind of think that way, right? And you don't really discriminate about genres. It's just, oh, I'm reading anything that interests me. I think where I took a definite turn away from mystery novels, as I was a big Nancy Drew reader as But then I started reading Diana Wynne Jones, and like she's the person who made me a writer, basically. Fire and Hemlock, I remember putting that book down and thinking, I made up stories before that, but that was the moment where I thought, I want to be a writer. The first moment that I remember thinking about wanting to write stories for other people to read. And then after that, just a slew of different things. I will specifically call out the comic book ElfQuest. I knew there would be fans of that here. Just something where it could be epic and yet very character-driven at the same time, where it could touch on all of these different groups that, this gets back to the anthropology again, that have different cultures, their ways of life are different. Sometimes the conflicts aren't, these people are good, these people are evil, but these two groups have incompatible ways of doing things, and the friction that arises from that. And then riffing off of what Brennan said, yeah, what I'm loving right now is the opening up of fantasy to a much broader range of worldviews, much broader range of cultures, and especially those things being written by people for whom that is their culture, rather than, oh, I read a book about it once, and that's enough for me to be going on with.
Okay, all right, so jumping off of that, what should we be paying attention to right now in fantasy? Besides you guys.
I don't know, I'm kind of busy.
Yeah. I used to say that the worst part about writing lit RPG is that I don't have time to read lit or play RPGs. I will say that...
What do you wish you're reading?
Honestly, like when I have a free chance, I will sort of browse and see like who's recommending things, but I often go back to like older works that like really inspire me, like Octavia Butler, like the nuances behind her work is just so deep, and so I'll dive back into that. Or I'll just try something new, like a comic book, or I'll try. I'm not really on the pulses. I'm usually just sort of writing and grinding. My fans often are like, "Oh, we're gonna chain you to a desk," and I'm like, "That's not as funny as you think."
I haven't even watched the third season of Jessica Jones yet.
Well, you are missing out.
I think it is somewhat true that, yeah, if you're involved in producing a thing, you wind up with less time to consume it than you might like. I know the problem I've been having for several years now is that I was writing enough things that required me to do substantial research, either the memoirs or before that the Onyx Court books. I was reading so much nonfiction as background for what I was writing that I stopped and went, oh my god, I'm reading almost no fiction, I need to fix that. And then I go on this kick where I'm like, I'm gonna read something. There's that book that came out recently, that was 2012. Okay, well, that's kind of research.
You should be reading Mary Robinette Koval,
Yeah.
just won the Hugo Award and the Nebula Award for a fantastic pair of novels. I mentioned Star Touched Queen. I really liked that book. I don't say her name because I can't pronounce it well, but I think it's Rashmi is her first name. And did I get it right? Did I pronounce it right? I can't get the... how do you pronounce her last name? I always get it wrong. Choksky? Yeah, you can access her. She comes to Dragon Con sometimes. Super nice. And I've read everything she's been writing and really loving it. I just read a book that my agent sent me that's not out yet, but will be out next year, and I don't remember the name of it, so I have to look it up, but it's really good. So I'll look that up. It's like you give it a manuscript, and so you don't even really see the title, you just read the book and go, wow, this is really cool, so I'll get the name of that for you. The genre is so broad right now, it's hard to keep track. Like when I was a kid, I could go in and find, the 5 new books published in a given week. I could read 3 of them, right? And I felt like through the 80s and 90s, I had a really good idea of everything that was being published. I still read a lot, I still have recommendations, but I feel like I read 1,000 of what gets published in the genre, and that's a good thing, right? It just means there's a ton out there. But I do have a Goodreads account where I post reviews. Only good reviews. If I don't like something, I just don't post a review of it. I'm not actually a reviewer. I'm just here to kind of highlight stuff I like. So if you want to find books that I like, there's I almost have the name of it. All right, I'll find it.
I think there's been a nice swing lately where the Hugos have kind of come around to showcasing some of what really is kind of new and exciting that's happening in the genre right now. Because for a while it felt like they were really sort of playing it very safe and conservative in ways that didn't really hit the new and exciting things that were happening. And that has changed in the last few years. So that's a useful place to kind of start. Not just the winners, but look at the nominees, look at the long list of like what got nominated.
And I will also say, the old masters are still writing, and writing great stuff, right? Jay Millen released a short story collection last year, the year before, that is just one of the best books I have ever read, The Emerald Circus. And this is Sifwa Grand Master and things like that. She's still writing stuff that just blows my mind. So.
She has literally published more than 365 books now. She has a book for every single day of the year, and then some.
You can go on.
Sorry.
I'll find this eventually.
You'll just randomly shout a title at some point. We'll know.
Okay, all right, so this is a good point for us to stop and let the audience do some questions. So we're gonna have some people with microphones in the aisles, and you guys will be able to ask questions. I do wanna remind people that Brandon and Jim both have individual Q&A sessions later, so this is not that. Let's try to stick with questions that can be answered by anybody. Okay, this is a good microphone, so we'll start.
Yeah, that's the next room. I got that one.
Yes, let's have them line up. Okay,
There-
Tom's
there's
got
the
a
mic
microphone
over
over
there.
there. So if you want to ask a question, go to Tom, and Aaron is over here.
The Kingdom of Liars. I found it. Nick Martell, Kingdom of Liars. Okay, there we go.
I was that one sitting in a bound arc on my office floor, and I've been meaning to get to it.
I said that was a perfect title for everyone's lining up. Kingdom of Liars!
We're all the kings and queens flying.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll alternate back and forth between Tom and Aaron. So,
Hi, I guess, what are some of your favorite character flaws in high fantasy? So either from stuff you've written or read, what's some of the best character flaws that you've ever seen?
It's not exactly a character flaw, I guess, but I love situations where somebody finds themselves in a conflict between, like, their society and the culture they live in, their held beliefs, or the strictures that are around them and what they're trying to do. Especially when then the answer to it isn't just going, oh, well, I don't care about those things, and moving on with your life, but having to find a way to navigate that, because that's what we do in real life when we run into these conflicts between our beliefs or our culture and the things that we need to accomplish. We usually don't just kind of chuck something out the window. We have to come up with a more interesting compromise. So that's not necessarily an interior flaw in character, but it's, for me, a fun source of problems.
My favorite kind of character flaw is someone who takes a good motive and overdoes it, right? Since I said, once you do fantasy, you become one of us, I'll note Magneto and this sort of thing, right? I love character flaws where somebody has a really interesting sort of rational and great motivation that they are just completely wrong about how they go about applying that. Makes for a fascinating character for me.
I'm always a sucker for redemption stories. For the story arcs of the characters who go down into somewhere bad and got to come back from it. That started off in Narnia with Edmund and with Eustace, who was like Edmund times 10 when it came to being a jerk. But I love the redemption arcs. I love seeing the characters come back from bad places.
I guess I like the opposite. I like it when somebody should be better and they're just not. There's an amazing scene from Buffy the Vampire Slayer where somebody has to sacrifice themselves and Spike says, "I'll do it," and they all look at me and goes, "Look, I know I tried to kill you all. I know that I don't really like you. I know my lifespan's much longer." He goes, "It's actually a really good point. I'm out of here." I like stories where, yes, we see the finer parts of ourselves, and yes, we see the really depraved stuff, but yeah, other times where it's that's just Joe. No, he just doesn't want to.
Wonderful to meet all of you. From tricking pixies with pizza to defecating your shark plate, there's a lot of comedic scenes that are in all of your books, but what was your favorite comedic scene to write?
Favorite?
I can give you my favorite line. I can't give you, it's not the whole scene, but it's something where Isabel is about to go do something incredibly reckless, and Tom grabs hold of her stopper and says it would be a damn stupid way to get killed. And she thinks, a damn stupid way to get killed would have described any number of incidents in my life. Had my luck been only a little different.
Humor is one of those tough things because everyone's sense of humor is different, right? And one of the ways I think the only way you can really counter this is to have a wide variety of different types of sense of humor represented by your characters. And you can tell that my sense of humor involves lots of bad puns, and I can only use a few characters for that because for a lot of people that gets on their nerves really fast.
I live with that at home. It's called my husband.
I'm glad I finally have children, so I have an excuse for the dad jokes. Right? Can I pick a favorite of those? I would say that in the Wax and Wayne books, every time Wayne uses a word that's almost right, such that I don't think, well, a good percentage of readers will miss it and just keep reading, like when he calls something defecation character. Like these words that if you're just reading fast, you won't even notice that he used the wrong word. Those are my favorite.
The dog words of humor.
For Turncoat, I wrote a running comedy bit where the idea was that Dresden would go out and try and frantically help everybody who was back at his apartment, taking shelter, and then come back only to find them in a Mexican standoff, an increasingly unlikely Mexican standoff. That was a whole lot of fun to write because I could just do absolutely ridiculous things with that.
My favorite stuff is when two friends betray each other only for comedic reasons. So I have two characters, Richter and Zion, and they're trying to defeat this. They're trying to defeat this monster, and Zion. Gnomes Rule. And he's like, I need you to draw the monster out. So Richter runs, and he's like, okay, shoot him. And he goes, okay. So about that time, he slept with my girlfriend. We're gonna figure this out. One of my favorite memes of all time is the difference between like good friends and best friends, where it's like a good friend sees you falling, passed out, and you've got vomit on you, and he picks you up and he puts you in bed. And a best friend, it's like a comic strip. And the best friend is like the same first things. He finds you, he picks you up, he's leading you away, and then he takes you like a wrestling ring and like throws you down and goes like this at the end. So yeah, I mean, just like being able to insert the everyday sort of ridiculousness and awesomeness that like we live, like the comedy of our lives, into these grand dramatic scenes, that's what I love the most.
Well, as all of us would like to say, thank you for being here, all of you. And for my question, at least two of you I know for sure have written, or at least I view Codex Alara as young adult fiction. And I'm just curious how you view the differences between young adult fiction and adult for fantasy, and whether there really should be a difference or if it's just a marketing ploy.
I'm an indie, and for me, I just wanted people to read the books. So my genre of lit RPG, there's no lit RPG section, but by common whatever, we all just went to cyberpunk. We were not cyberpunk, but that's where we kind of hung out. So for me, in the way I would write, I would never write a book and be like, I'm writing young adult, therefore I can't say, certain words, but other than that, I would never want to feel confined. So for me, it's just like a convention, but that's me as an indie author.
All of our categories are conventions.
Writing young adult is a big deal because there are all kinds of rules and considerations that you have to take into account going into this. I can write anything I want in Aleron because I'm not marketing it to kids. If it's something that's going to be specifically marketed to kids, they're a little bit more heavy-handed about what they're going to have in and out.
I found that that's a bigger distinction between middle grade and YA.
Yeah.
The middle grade YA line is a much bigger line than the young adult line, because if you're not familiar with the genre conventions, middle grade is kind of ending around 12-ish. They're the books. The big dividing line becomes between middle grade and YAs. Middle grade is usually handed to a kid by some gatekeeper. It's given by the parents, it's given by a librarian, it's given by a teacher, or things like that. And YA is where they're picking it themselves. And that dividing line is different for all kids. And so a lot of times you will find, like if you're publishing with Disney Hyperion, your YA is going to be edited for content. Certain other imprints, they won't edit YA for content. Specifically because the kids are choosing it themselves, and in that case, you don't have to worry about it as much. The question of difference between adult and young adult, there are a few things. It is mostly kind of marketing, but generally, young adults just has a few different conventions. You usually need to get in a little faster to your story. It wastes a little less time, which is generally good advice anyway, but it does hold even stronger for YA. YA does tend to focus on one or two viewpoint narratives, and focus in very heavily on them, but of course there are things that ignore that as well. So, I mean, that's probably a rule of thumb, but, you know, there's probably a YA track here, there usually is. You could go to that and get better advice than I think we could give you.
Yeah, no, YA is just odd because it's a fairly recent invention, right? Like previously we basically had children's books and we had adult books, and I started reading the adult books when I was about, 10 or 12 or somewhere around then. And yeah, everything that I've heard from the YA authors I know is that there are very few hard and fast rules at this point, with about the only thing being that the story needs to be told from a teen perspective, only even with boundaries of that art can sometimes be kind of fuzzy. Though I do have one book, Lies of Prophecy, that I wasn't able to sell to either adult or young adult publishers because the main character was in college, which turned out to be like a trough in between. It's too old for YA and it's too young for adult, and nobody wanted to take it.
Yeah, they tried to create new adult for that genre, and for that stuff, and it just flopped.
It turned into sort of like an erotica subgenre or something like that. So yeah, it didn't turn into what I wanted it to be, which was a market for my book.
I mean, obviously, college adult fiction is fan fiction. I mean, that's...
So, as a reader at least, when you're getting towards the end of either, a story or a whole epic series, there's a feeling of both triumph and loss, at least on the reader side. What's it like being on the writer side, getting to the end of something really big?
I've made myself cry. It's probably not, dignified to admit that, but fiction and memoirs in particular, because they're written in first person, they felt so conversational, and I had written 5 of them, so that's 5 years of my life I've spent working on this, and it felt like a really good friend of mine was moving across the country. It's like, it's not that we would never see each other again, but I wasn't going to get to hang out with her on a daily basis anymore, and it felt kind of sad.
That's a great way to put it. That's I have that same sort of feeling. There's also a bunch of relief, though, also, because when you get it, you kind of get
That's true.
like, okay, I can put this down. I often say that, like, for me with books, I'm usually carrying around a bunch of books in my head that aren't, of course, finished, but it's like I gotta keep this book in my head, and when I get it written down, it can leave my brain. I don't have to remember it anymore. It's on the page, and things like this, and can be a really big relief when I've been holding quite a bit of a long book in my head. It's like I can empty the RAM, right? So I can clear my RAM and put other things in there.
For me, it's a sense of profound relief. When I'm in the last editing section or last whatever, I'm like grinding nonstop. People are like, "Where's the book? Where's the book?" And there's actually a time where it was around Christmas time, and I sang all of a Christmas Carol song, just using my name, Al, 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 Al. And the comments were like, "We broke him, enough. Quit emailing." So when I'm done, it's like, oh my god. And sometimes I'll sleep for 24 hours straight. It's just, so great.
The other good part about it is that it means that you get to start something new. You've been on this one site working for years, and when it's finally done, you just go, yep, okay, now I get to go start do stuff that I haven't done in a long time. I get to start, I get to build a new world and take all the lessons that I've learned, from writing this one into my next one. My next one's going to be better.
Yeah, the novel you're not writing often looks shinier.
That's what it feels like to me. It's, oh, thank God I'm done with this wreck. Now I can write something that's viable.
I started reading an RPG recently, and I've been really grateful that it has exposed me to a lot of Russian authors and Chinese genres like Zhenjia and Wuxia, and I was wondering what kind of non-American authors or genres you might know of and want to recommend.
Along those lines, I think that, and the names are always really weird. It's convenience food store or old cheeseburger wrapper. It's they're really weird names, the way they translate them over for us. But Reincarnation of the Strongest Sword God by Lucky Old Cat is amazing. King of Gods is amazing. These are just Chinese web novel things that you can sort of find either on like, Wixie.com or webnovel.com or Royal Road or something like that. I think Han, the Great Mechanic, like he's amazing. These are all things that I would call like epic, high fantasy authors that also incorporate like, really, really funny, viewpoints. But also you understand, you can very easily tell that there are authors that are not traditionally English speaking because of the patterns of their speech and the ideals they espouse. And it gives you an exposure to something that's very different from what we have here. At least until they, start making more money and then they get an editor and make it just like this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into reading any of the Chinese web novels yet, just because I see friends posting I'm on chapter 350 of like 17,000, and I'm but I have been watching in TV form some of these things, like the drama Nirvana and Fire is absolutely amazing, really, really good political sort of like kind of low-grade fantasy, and then other things that are, and I'll apologize for bad pronunciation, Shansha, where it's like the Taoist cultivation of your powers to become an immortal, or Chuanhan, I think, is the one where it's like gods and immortals and demons and things, where you get really epic high fantasy, but it is definitely coming from a mode that is not in any way imprinted on Tolkien, and I'm really enjoying that as a change of pace.
You get a lot of like, this is as rare as a phoenix feather, or things like that. It's just strange, fun, quirky little things that if you guys haven't tried like that style of fiction, it's new, it's fresh, it's fun.
One of the things I really like about fantasy over the last, say, 20 years, although I know they've always been there are a lot more of them, and that is female heroes. And I was just wondering who some of your favorite female heroes are in sci-fi and fantasy, whether some you might have written yourselves or some maybe somebody else has given.
Well, I guess we've already called out Mary Robinette Cole's books. That is one of the first things that leaps to mind. I also really like Cheris in Young Lee's Nine Fox Gambit, Machine Wings of Empire series. Cheris doesn't necessarily stay at the center of the story for the whole trilogy because of the way that it's structured, but for starters, it's not just a female character, but one whose superpower is basically math. And that's cool.
Cordelia Vorkosigan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah!
Thank you, people who ever had.
So as far as like the names of the characters, I'm sort of not as good at remembering that. Some of this I've read like 30 years ago. But I will say that if you have not read Octavia Butler, then you are missing out. Yeah, she's absolutely amazing. She talks about everything from social commentary to alternate paths of evolution to an invasion from space would not be with lasers and big ships. It would just be a single cell that slowly changes some like Midwest town. And you're like, oh, they're weird. No, they're just Midwestern. No, they're aliens. Melanie Rawn is obviously good. Catherine Kurtz, who is here at DragonCon, like her Yini it took me on a journey that I still remember much longer. Obviously Margaret Roy. I mean, like the list of female authors that are creating these amazing characters are great. But I will say that like when I'm thinking of a character that I like that either qualifies like this is my favorite minority character, this is my favorite female character, it is a character that is inherently wonderful, inherently strong, and they have the elements and the taste of whatever demographic we're talking about. It's basically like, are you writing a story that you would identify first, like, oh, this is a female character, or no, this is an amazing character, and she's female, and because of that, she adds certain elements to the story that are different. Me personally, I love authors that can incorporate different parts of different cultures, different sexes, different whatever you want to term it, into their characters, but in no way would I think that this character can only be this one thing. Because I do think that it's ridiculous to say that the diversity that we have pigeonholes you rather than expands you.
I will also add, for something more recent and rather more epic fantasy, Samantha Shannon's Priory of the Orange Tree has a, apparently you've read that one. It is a giant break of a book, but it's really good. Priory of the Orange Tree, if you have not heard of it. It's an interesting title too.
I think we'd also probably be remiss if we didn't mention N.K. Jemisin, because the 100,000 Kingdoms blew my mind. The reason all of her stuff is great, but the reason I really like 100,000 Kingdoms is it's taking me, it's literary fantasy, but it's also kind of reaching into the popular fantasy Again, it's walking that line, and so it uses a lot of popular fantasy world building ideas and a lot of popular fantasy sort of storytelling ideas, but it tells it in a literary way. And because of that, it came off as just not pretentious at all. It just came off as a great fantasy novel, not a great literary fantasy. They just came off as a great fantasy novel, and that's what I like to see. That's what Ursula Le Guin was always able to do with her works. It's right. It's just great science fiction, even though it's using literary tropes as well, and things like just great stories. And sometimes really literary fiction doesn't tell a great story, it has the literary styling, and I think 100,000 Humans does both.
Thank you guys for being here with all of us. So magic is a huge part of fantasy, and everybody's magic works differently. When you're creating a new magical system or a new magical world, what do you look for? How do you reconcile the alienness of that with the human stories that you try to tell?
I guess I don't see it as alien, because this goes back to the kind of folklore background. I'm often looking at real-world beliefs of like how have people thought about this stuff working, and so it's not separate from human culture and human behavior. As for specifics of how I approach it, I'm on a panel at 10 p.m. tonight where I'll probably say a lot more about that, so I'll skip it for now.
I wrote several very long essays about the rules that I apply to my own writing. I named them after myself, so writer, we do that, right? And so you can go Google Sanderson's first law, and it's not a law in that I expect everyone to follow it, it's just a guideline that I use that helps me write better magic systems, and it answers the question.
Yeah, I would just say, just ask yourself 3 questions about the magic. What does it cost, first of all, because there's always a cost. What does it cost? What can't it do? And how does it change the people who use it? And if you start with that, then you'll be able to design something that should be fairly functional.
That's Sanderson's second law.
I did not want to go forth on this question. I mean, basically, it comes down to accountability for me, right? I mean, just like Jim said, it's like the worst thing for me in a story is when the story's going along, you're like, how is he going to get out of it? And they're like, oh, but they got this new facet of magic that we've never mentioned before. I mean, it just sort of ruins it. It feels like lazy writing to me. But if you look at something that does have a logical progression, is accountable to laws that are, even though they're different from ours, and then look at how it changes the nuances of the person using it, and that's what really matters, right? Like The Walking Dead is like partly about good, zombie deaths, but it's really more about like, okay, how are the people that are having to exist in this world, like what are they doing, like hardcore, like, end of days kind of thing. So accountability is different.
Though I would say, not exactly a counter-argument here, because these aren't incompatible, but my preference is not to have it systematized too much, because like I play D&D, it's a lot of fun, but God, I find magic in that kind of boring, because it is very systematized and there's no numinous element to it anymore. Nothing about it feels like it evokes a sense of wonder to me. It's more like, press this button and this effect comes out. And so that's the part that I try to keep in it, is like, yeah, there should be, it's like, what can it do, what can't it do? But I think of it more from the standpoint of what's the symbolic logic underpinning this, rather than what are the exact mechanics of how it works. Because the more I mechanize it, the less I have that feeling of something spiritual and something, wondrous is actually happening.
What's something that you put into your work that you were almost positive people would either dislike or find controversial that they just ended up ignoring or even liking?
Bad puns.
I don't care. I don't know. There's somebody that hates everything. You offend someone by walking around on this earth. There is someone that you have made absolutely furious by doing so. I try not to worry about that too much.
I have a lot of social commentary. Specifically, there was this teacher that I had in 10th grade that I hated. And sometimes when I was writing book 1, and he was just like, you do it this way, Colin. I'm like, ha ha ha. And so I would do things intentionally laughing about how I didn't like it. But as far as like my books, like I said, like I touch on social commentary a bunch in it, and I mean it's ridiculous the responses that I'll get. I'll say like, there is so much Christian imagery, 1 out of 5 stars, and somebody else will be like, Jesus is gonna judge you for the horrible things you said, 1 out of 5 stars. Somebody else is like, these are horrible depictions of women, and somebody else is like, how do you love women so much? Be a man. I mean, like people are gonna be upset set, no matter like what you do. I say like you follow your own truth, and if everyone is telling you that you're doing something horrible, maybe listen. But other than that, just like, you know, write something cool, like you said. There's so many books coming out. I love that we're adding to the overall culture of our species by putting out so much stuff. So more stuff, more barrier.
And you say that I was doing, when I released the third Stormlight book, we released like a third of it online, chapter by chapter, new one every couple of days. And when one of those came out, there was a scene that I got one person who wrote me an email that said, this is way too risque, how dare you? And I got another one, was like, why don't you ever put risque things in your book? Why do you hold back so much? This is totally unrealistic because of this. And I'm like, same scene.
In my fourth book, so I like people that read me know that I love like movies, and like I'll drop little Easter eggs. So there's a great movie called Super Troopers where it sort of pans out, but like, you know, they've arrested this like, you know, German couple and they're gonna have sex, and then he goes, "Who wants a mustache ride?" And like he sort of walks away. So the main character is like having like a bisexual scene, and it just says like, "Who wants a mustache ride?" And like it's a whole scene. There's nothing sexual about it. But I got all these 1 out of 5 stars. Like, how could you put this in? You know, Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, blah blah. And I thought about how to respond to it, if I should just lash out, but I decided instead to just list it as like an LGBT, and I was like #1 in that genre for 3 months. So, as opposed to like worrying about it, just be into it, and you'll find your tribe, you'll find your people.
Yeah, I mean, people do get offended by different things. Thinking of ElfQuest, because I mentioned it earlier, in the fourth collected volume, there's a thing where the characters are basically going off to war, and so the night before they go marching off to war, they basically have like a giant party, you know, / orgy kind of thing. I mean, it's not explicit or anything. Like, you can tell that people are kind of hooking up in the corners, but it's not like it suddenly turns into pornography. But you got lots of parents who are like tearing out and cutting out the pages of those scenes and sending them back to the writers, being like, how dare you put this in this thing that my kid might read? And Wendy and Richard Pini, the creators, were like, we found it interesting that nobody cut out the pages of the horrible bloody war that followed. Like, apparently that was okay for their precious children to read. We're really puritanical about like, oh, sexy things, like, how dare you put that in there, but, you know, somebody's guts on the floor, yeah, sure, that's fine. When you think about it, that's kind of messed up. But what you were saying of people being upset, oh, Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I mean, yes, anytime you're putting in like diversity of gender, ethnicity, religion, all those things, like there may be people that you're offending, but I very much don't think of it in those terms. I'm thinking about the people who are going to be so happy to see themselves represented in the book, to see that, you know, then the people that they know are a part of the story, a part of the world. I would much rather think about how I can make somebody happy by putting that in there than how I can piss somebody off.
So, how do you approach dealing with a plot thread that may have come up earlier in your books that just doesn't sync with the rest of the story anymore?
You just cut those out. That's easy. That's great, because, you know, then you can make your book shorter. And I always have problems with this. So, the easy cuts.
Don't you talk to us about making books shorter. Oh my goodness.
I released a book where the publisher called me and said, our printer can't print this. Just learn them. And they had to print a different printer. I said, George did one longer, so use whoever George is using.
No, I actually find that RPGs have been really good practice for this in a way, because if you're in a long-running game, you can't go back and revise what you did a year ago in the game. It's like, no, that's part of the story now. And like, you know, yeah, theoretically you could just agree with the other players and we're going to pretend that never happened, but that's never satisfying. And so it's been really good practice for me going, okay, well, I've got this thing going and it doesn't fit with what I'm trying to do now, but like, can I find a different way to look at it or take it in a different direction? Or maybe if I bring in another plot to connect to that in some fashion, can I do something? And this is how you end up with, you know, books that are going to kill your dog if you drop it on him. That's my preferred method of doing it, is try to work within that framework, and that really is the thing that games have been excellent for.
This is actually directed towards Kong. She's a black author and black main character in fantasy is a big deal, especially for me. But as far as like, 2019, diversity is a big deal nowadays. Do you all authors feel pressure to add more diversity, like black characters, bisexual characters, stuff like that, in this new generation, this new year?
No, I don't feel pressure to add more, and I don't feel pressure to take anything out. I write a story, like I said, I write a story because, number one, I wanted to write an enjoyable book. But I quickly discovered during my, while I was in the process of writing the first one, that writing something enjoyable wasn't enough for me. So I decided to do the social commentary, but decided to do it in a way that was like, almost stealth, something that like was palatable, something that people would sort of get, right? For me, it's about what effect am I having? Because yes, I could shoehorn in, I could shove things in to cater or to meet some quota or to whatever that some people think is gonna like, but growing up, I have always been someone that liked a wide diversity of things, right? And so like, I like rock and roll, I like old school hip hop. And my friends like rock and roll, like, how can you listen to hip hop? And my friends like hip hop, it's like, how can you listen to rock and roll? And I'm like, well, how about you just expand who you are and get there, right? So while it was very important to me to touch on societal issues and to hopefully have my books bridge gaps between people, they're mine. And I'm gonna write something that I think is effective and enjoyable and true. So.
All right, I think we have time for 2 more questions before it's time to wrap up.
Sorry. Corny question time. Always curious to see what y'all say. What age you were when you first decided to really get into writing, and what kind of pushed you into it?
Well, I guess I already partly gave my answer away. Diana Jones, Fire and Hemlock. I was about 9 or 10 when I read it. And then I got serious about writing when I was about 18 when I went to college, because then I had a regular writers group. And so I had much more impetus to take those things that were in my head and actually put them on paper for other people to comment on at the meeting.
I was 14. I was not a reader. I got handed Dragon's Bane by Barbara Hamley. I've told this story a lot, but I kind of rocked my world, and I wanted to find out how she had done that, how she had had such a profound effect on me. So I started writing my first story about a year later, maybe 2 years, somewhere around there.
I was 18. Margaret Weiss of the Dragonlance Chronicles came to my high school and gave a talk at lunch, and that was the day I was skipping class and hiding in the library. So I had to go to her talk, and it just sounded like a cool job, and so the next year I wrote my first novel.
I always kind of wanted to be a writer, but the same way I wanted to be a cowboy or a magician, basically. It never occurred to me that this would become a serious part of my life. When I wrote my first book, I thought maybe my mom would read it. She hasn't read it since. It never occurred to me that I would actually get here, and it was sort of just one of those things that, like, life is what happens when you're making other plans. So, I mean, I'm loving this is my dream come true, but it never really occurred to me. So.
All right, you get the honor for our last question.
All right, I hope it's a good one. So when you're writing high fantasy, science fiction, the setting, the magic, the creatures, that's all an enormous part of the story. How do you prevent that from getting in the way of revealing the humanity of the characters that are there?
What an excellent question.
Yeah. If you find the answer, you should tell me right away.
It really is kind of this odd thing where we are united through, like Marie said, setting, right? This is what unites fantasy as a genre, but in some ways setting is the least important of the, if you kind of look at plot, setting, and characters, 3 groupings of things that make a story. If you have a story that has like great characters but a weak setting, still usually a pretty good book, right? If you have a story that has a great setting and terrible characters, still probably going to be a bad book, right? Ideally, you want to do all 3 of these things well, and that's, I don't think you can be great at this without learning to do all 3 of them well, but at the end of the day, you're absolutely right.
I don't think you can actually separate those things. I think they're all part of one whole, and dividing them is not necessarily useful.
Yeah, well, and I'll say my favorite thing is when the characters are themselves like embedded in the products of their setting. going to blow my own horn a tiny bit, I have a Patreon called New Worlds, and it's all about world building, and one of the things I recently went through in the essays was like, how do you handle the exposition of that world building in a way that's not going to then like bog the story down? And a chunk of it does boil down to, it needs to be something that matters to the characters and is so intertwined with who they are and what they're doing that you don't have to stop and explain, it's just coming out naturally as the characters live their lives and deal with their problems.
Yeah, and I would say for me, I always have to sort of hold myself back, because I come up with these like really fun worlds and magic systems that like I want everyone to know about, and blah blah blah, and I'm like, all right, you're doing too much, you're calming down. So by introducing magic slowly and then showing how, as the reader is discovering it, how the characters are changing by discovering it too, I think automatically incorporates their humanity and interweaves it with the story. And while I'm an organic plus plotter, as I'm doing that, sometimes the characters will respond in a certain way that I'm like, you know what, that is a better nuance, and then I'll let the story guide me to a certain extent. So.
Okay, well that is time. Thank you to our wonderful panelists.